A show based on the facts, honesty, the man, the myth, the legend. ChristiTutionalist Joseph M. Leonard.
Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with thelibertybeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's L-E-N-A-R-D. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. If you're looking at behind-the-scenes video, BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble, YouTube, you can see I'm holding up a book. It is Neil Mammen joining us, and his Jesus is involved in politics. Why aren't you? Why isn't your church? And a second subtitle, The Only Way to a Happier, Healthier, Safer, and Mutually Prosperous America. And I'm very happy to have Neil on because I introduced Neil and this book to my friend Ed Bondarenko with Wham Radio. You may have heard him there. I introduced Ed to Neil via this book, and this book, I don't want to forget to say, is one of the reasons I'm doing this show and invented the term ChristiTutionalist, right?
Wow.
A Christian U.S.-based constitutionalist. Page 100. The Bible's view of governing. Bingo! Exactly what this show is about. And community, which is free will, choice, voluntary, is biblical. Communism, forced theft at the barrel of a gun, is not biblical. Welcome to the... Finally, welcome to the show, Neil Mammen. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Joseph. I am honored. I did not know all that background. Thank you. I'm honored.
Yeah, I've been wanting to have a reason to have you come on, and I just, because you were on with Ed and Wham, so
yeah.
I've heard you many times. Yeah, I've heard you many times, and of course, having the book, which I encourage people to buy, along with my 5 internationally available books, of course. But yeah, that'll be mentioned in the show notes. You won't have to remember the title. It'll be in the show notes. But yeah, I thought that I had told you when I started the show that you were Ed's Your American Heritage, as well as Pastor Rick of Wham's Moment of Clarity, and Saturday mornings on Wham, Abolitionist Roundtable, which is also Christian discussion. All of you inspired me because I've been involved in politics since 1978, but since 2001, not 9/11 related, I had health issues, so I've been able to do less and less. But hey, I could do this from my couch, right?
Yeah.
So again, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a great honor for me to have you on the show. Again, you helped inspire. But anyway, now that we're 5 minutes in, let's actually get to talking to Neil Mammen. First, let's start with the usual proverbial first question. Cue the Who song. Who are you? Who, right? Give us all that 411. Born, raised, where you are now, la.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born at a very young age in Ghana, in Africa. And my father was, at that time, he was an atheist and a communist. He became a Christian when I was about 5, but he was a professor in physics, traveling around Africa, different universities. So I was born in Ghana, grew up in Jamaica, Ethiopia, Sudan, and then in the Middle East in Yemen. So had a lot of, my family actually my ancestry is actually from Indian Christians. So St. Thomas went to India in 51 AD, converted a bunch of pagans there to Christianity, and that's the Mar Thoma Church. So we date our heritage back to that. But at my father's generation, there was a whole bunch of communists and atheists because that was the rage at the time. But he became a Christian when I was about 5, as I mentioned. And so I grew up in a Christian home, effectively, but very socialistically minded, because India tends to be a very socialistic nation. They think government is responsible for all these different things. And so when I came to the States, to do my degree in electrical engineering and computer science. Well, actually, it was just electrical engineering at the time. So I got a degree in electrical engineering, computer engineering, solid state physics, and then went to Silicon Valley to work. And while I was there, I tended to be very socialistic until I lost a bunch of debates, because I love debating, and I lost a bunch of debates with my conservative friends. And finally, I realized, well, the reason I was losing the debates because my facts were wrong.
Yeah, your delusional socialist communist thoughts of pipe dream delusions couldn't hold up to reality.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, the reality was like, hey, well, look at this. Have you seen it work? Have you seen this work? And my dad had stopped being a communist because it didn't work in Russia, because that was his model at the time. And
hasn't worked anywhere.
Yeah, but specifically for him, it was Russia that he was watching, and he said, well, it doesn't work. It obviously doesn't make any sense. And then, but it's interesting to understand that in South India, where I grew up, the idea of Christianity and communism was not far separated from each other. In fact, I have 2 uncles who are famous communists and Christians. But if you think about it, communism is completely unbiblical. What they had done is they had taken the concept of that we should take care of the poor and applied it to the government should take care of the poor forcibly by taking money.
Yeah, so that is not a proper application of render unto Caesar. Completely bastardized the Bible. Like I said,
it's also not a proper application of when the first Christians got together. They were living in a communal system, but it rapidly stopped working.
The Bradford colony. Yeah, the Bradford colony. I talk about it all the time. And the reason why communism fails is the same reason why Jesus said the poor will always be among you. It wasn't an economic statement. It was a human nature statement. Yeah. If you allow people to be lazy, they'll be lazy.
They'll be lazy, exactly. And that's so what basically, but the problem, as I say in my book, is government charity is nothing more than me sending the IRS to your house and forcing you to donate to my favorite charity. Because why is that charity that the government picked the right charity? Why isn't it one of the millions of other ones, right, that are more successful? More than that, government charity doesn't work because the government spends 6 times more. So in other words, if you give $1 to the government, you're lucky if 15 cents gets to the poor person. Everything else goes to pensions, salaries, buildings, programs, training programs, lobbyists, all that stuff. And only 15 cents gets to the poor person. On the other hand, it also doesn't work because the government gauges itself by, so in other words, if I have 10 people on my government program today and I have 20 people next year, I'm successful.
Yeah, that's to a real charity, that's failure.
Exactly.
You want less dependency, not more. Now, first, though, I got to go back because my audience knows I cannot avoid the bad puns. But this would be kind of in poor taste, so I'm just going to put the thought out there and let you come up with it yourself. Being from Ghana, good thing that you don't have. Okay, let's just leave it at that. But anyway, exactly. And I think you've kind of, which is not to say, and I have vetted charities, terrorstrikes.info, my primary book, yes, on terrorism, but not only about terrorism, not about death, but life and living. And not all charities are equal. Some are ripoff. Look at the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah, absolutely.
They raised billions for Haiti. 10 million went to their friends in Haiti. They kept the rest, right? So
Absolutely.
not all charity is created equal, to be honest and fair. But for the most part, most charities are indeed valid, really out to be our brother's keeper and take care of the widows and orphans through our personal commandment. We are to want to take care of the unable versus the unwilling. That's in the Bible, unable versus unwilling. Take care of the unable through our free will and choice. We are to want to, not be forced to. Now, I think you've kind of already answered this, but
let me mention this before you go to that point. The reason why charities are mostly good or useful is precisely because if they're not good, you can stop giving to them. And that's why it's called the free market, it's competition. So in other words, if I'm giving to a charity and I go, man, like when people were giving money, billions of dollars to BLM. Well, BLM went out and bought a whole bunch of homes for themselves and nothing actually helped Black people. So people stopped giving to BLM. And now BLM is, they only have the homes that they bought, but nothing else. And that's exactly why charity works. But you try that with the government, you go to the IRS and says, I don't want to give you any money because you're not doing a good job of taking care of the poor. Well, the IRS will say, don't worry, we will now take care of you in jail. And now they will feed you and provide you with a place to live.
And the other point of charity is why the fasciocrats, I call them. There are literally 28 planks of the NSDAP platform in today's DNC platform. Sure, much more nice, loving, flowery language, but they're there. They're the fasciocrats. They want top-down dictatorial control from D.C. That's the other thing about charity. They are local. They know the difference between the unwilling and the unable. And we will get to EBLM, of course, in a minute. But I had, of course, previously talked to Kevin McGarry, which I joked with him. He's not a McMeal from McDonald's. It's McGarry, because I can never pass the lame puns. But we will talk to you a little about EBLM too. Mainly talk with him about that. I mainly wanted you for the book. Again, page 100, the Bible's view of governing. I think we've kind of already covered most of that. Do you have any other, again, community, voluntary, communism, force? One is biblical, the other is not. Do you have any other ads you want to throw from the book without giving away the entire book?
No, I'm fine. And one thing that's not in the book that will be in a newer book is I didn't go into great detail of the Bible talking about the formation of government. What I talked about is what the purpose of government was in the Bible. Is exactly what the purpose of government is that we did in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence says that the purpose of government is to secure the rights that we already have, not to give us the rights, because you don't get rights from the government. I play a game with people. I say, do you have constitutional rights? And they say, yes. I said, no, you don't have constitutional rights because the Constitution doesn't give you any rights. The Constitution is there to protect the rights you already have that you got from God. Now, why do you have to get the rights from God? One of the problems with people saying is, well, you crazy Christians, you want a theocracy. Well, here's the reason why you need God for rights. Because the only person that can tell you and me that we have to treat our neighbor equally is someone who has authority over you and me. So, like, for instance, I can tell my kids to do something, but I can't tell your kids to do something unless they recognize the authority in me. So who's the only person that can go and tell Hitler that he has to treat the Jews equally, that tells a slave owner he has to free the slaves, that can tell every single human being in the world that they have to treat every single other human being equally, is only the person who has authority over every single human being. And the only person who has authority over every single human being is going to be the creator of all mankind. And that's what the Declaration of Independence says. So logically, you get there. And that's why it says it's self-evident.
Yes,
because you go there logically.
endowed by our Creator. Come on, man, you know the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, here's the second part of that. People keep saying, well, you're just a Christian nationalist. You want a theocratic society. I'm like, hang on.
No.
First of all, I don't know what you mean by Christian nationalist. I'm a Christian patriot. But here's what you need to understand. You realize that we believe that God has made all men created all men equal. But you know what? If you take the Christian out of that patriot part of it, and you look at Muslim patriot, the Muslim Quran their God does not give everybody equal rights. If you look at the Hindu, if you say you're a Hindu patriot, the Hindus, their Bhagavad Gita does not give you. In fact, the Hindus have a caste system where some people are untouchable and some people are Brahmins and they are right at the top, right? So the Hindu God doesn't give you unalienable rights. If you look at Buddhism, Buddhism is essentially atheistic. So there is no God to give you any unalienable rights. If you're an atheist, there is no God giving you any rights. Folks, if you look throughout the history of religion, there's only one religion, one God, one religious belief that says all men are created equal, and that's Christianity. You take Christianity or you take the Bible out of your belief system and you don't have rights. Is that what you want? Do you really want to take the Bible out of your nationalism? Do you really want to take the Bible out of patriotism? You're going to get a communist China. You're going to get the Soviet Union. You're going to get Islamic fundamentalist rule like in Iran. You're going to get the Taliban. You're going to get Fidel Castro. Is that what you really want? Now, I'm sure some of you want that, but that's not what you want.
Well, three things now. You like the Queers for Palestine, who, if they went to Palestine, they would be stoned to death.
I've been to Palestine. I grew up in the Middle East. I'm telling you, this is not a stance. Try saying that. Go do that Queers for Palestine march out in the public. Well, you know.
No one's being stoned to death here. No Christian. We want to hate the sin, but love the sinner. Yeah. There you get stoned to death. Now, of course, there are bad Christians who don't know their Bible, and why this show is here. The whole Bible in full context. You can't be a Christian and be a communist or a socialist. You haven't read your Bible.
Well, let's put it this way. You can't be a biblical Christian. I mean, you might be a Christian, but you can't be a biblical Christian. You may be saved.
Christian in name only. Yeah.
But you're not going to be biblical or theologically accurate. There's one more thing and I want to mention this about the government, and this is something that's going to come out in the new book, is that the very first time, and the very first time I ask people this, I say, when was the first time we see the concept of a republic? Because they say Donald Trump is the biggest danger to democracy that there ever was. I want to tell you he is. He is the biggest danger to democracy. Because we don't have a democracy.
Right.
We have a republic. And so when the Democrats are worried about is that he will return us to the republic that we were. So he is the biggest danger to the democracy of the United States, right? Because we don't want a democracy in the United States. In fact, the founding fathers were afraid of democracy. They called them mobocracies. And if you look at John Adams and Madison, they said, democracies never survive. They've always committed suicide by killing themselves. Right? And if you look throughout history, you'll see democracies always do. Why? Because the democracy is nothing more than 51% of the population voting to take the power and everything from the 49%.
Two wolves and one sheep voting what's for dinner.
What's for dinner. And as somebody says, Benjamin Franklin said, and a republic is a well-armed
if you could keep And as Franklin said, a republic if you can keep it, which is why I use the hashtag roar. I'm not talking about Katy Perry's Helen Reddy, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar tribute. I'm talking restore our American republic. But I mentioned, please feel free to borrow that, but just remember where you heard it first. But I mentioned Wham earlier, another Pastor Sean Todd on Sundays at noon, and you could go to whamradio.com. There's a listen live and listen anywhere on the planet. He says, and I agree, a lot of fake Christians want the hippie hacky sack version of Jesus.
Yes.
the go forth and sin no more part. No. You
No,
are
we
just
won't do that. Yeah.
no. You're supposed
Jesus.
to just forgive me. None of this. I'm supposed to be better when I leave. None of this. Overturning the tables. Oh no, none of that tough love Jesus stuff.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. People say, well, Jesus ate with sinners. Yes, but Jesus ate with sinners. A, they knew they were sinners, and B, he knew they were sinners, and C, he talked about them being sinners. Now, I didn't condemn them. He just said, you are a sinner, and you need to, here's how you go forth and sin no more. And he clarified where he was. So he ate with sinners, but they knew they were sinners while they were in his presence. And that's unlike everybody else who's like, no, I'm going to justify every sin I want. Now, I want to get back to the Republic real quick, though. So the trick question I ask people, I go, where was the first idea of the Republic? Where did we get the first idea of the Republic? And most people go, oh, Greece or Rome or something like that. And I go, no. The very first time we hear about the Republic, first time it's written down in the history of the entire history of mankind, is in Exodus 18. Exodus 18 is the very first republic founded. In Exodus 18, Moses is told by his father-in-law, who is now a believer in God, how to create a republic. It says you assign 10 people to elect one representative, and those 10 elect one representative, those 50 elect one, and goes all the way up until the final one. And that is what our republic is based on. In fact, the founding fathers specifically based our republic, looked at all the other republics and realized that our republic was the best one. Why are all the other republics, why were they cast down? Because they had basic ideas, but in all the other republics, men were not free. You could take the Republic of Rome. Well, only if you were a Roman man of power did you have any vote in it. And so our republic is based more on the Jewish republic, where everybody was treated equal, everybody was created equal, and as long as you were part of that government, even if you were an alien that was able to vote, you were able to vote. So first of all, our republic comes from there. Secondly, the republic is representative government. Thirdly, what's interesting is if you look at the Jewish republic, the commandment from God is 1 in 10 people were supposed to be elected. That means the Bible says 1 in 10 Christians need to be an elected representative of some sort. Now, I always tell people when I'm preaching this in church and I say, look down your aisle, count to 9. If there is no representative in those 9, then you're supposed to be it. You need to be running for office.
Amen.
Right?
Thank you for putting that out there. That is absolutely correct. I've not done a show on the foundation of our founding fathers regarding that aspect of the Bible. I've covered many other biblical issues regarding politics, but I want to go back to Jesus ate with sinners and said, go forth and sin no more. He did not, and this is where Matthew 7 gets bastardized. Condemn not, lest ye be condemned, because you have then still a chance for repentance later and then be saved and go to heaven.
Right.
Unlike the Bible, Matthew 7, we've mistranslated from Greek, Aramaic, Latin, and whatnot, right? Condemn not, because there are 12 other scriptures judging biblically. Not being a hypocrite, remove the log from your own eye, one biblical set of standards to judge. Condemnation, however, is reserved for the Lord.
I had not heard that interpretation of that or translation of that. But what's more important, I think, is that if you're going to say you cannot judge, then you are in the inevitable position of saying then you can't make any decisions on your own.
Correct.
You can't pick one car over the other. You can't pick one job over the other. You can't, in fact, what's as my friend Frank Turek says, you can't judge me for judging them. Are you judging me?
You cannot be a woman and any man comes up to you and asks for a date. Can you say no? Because that would be a judgment. That's why Matthew 7 is wrongly translated. It is condemn not, lest ye be condemned. 12 other scriptures say, indeed, judge biblically.
Right. And in fact, it doesn't say don't judge or don't condemn. It says when you do so biblically, because there is a standard. In other words, and here's the other thing: it's why are we so picky on this? Because there is no moral objective standard unless it comes from God. You can't have an objective morality unless you have an objective moral authority. Just like you can't have somebody saying treat everybody equally unless they have authority. You can't say don't do the A, B, or C unless they have the authority to tell you why you should not do A, B, and C and tell you not to do it. So in other words, I can tell my son don't do this, but somebody else can't tell my son don't do this, especially if I've told him that he can't, right? So unless that person has authority over me. Right. And so authority is where it counts on. So you've got to have an objective moral lawgiver to have an objective moral law.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I talk about Penn of Penn and Teller, a renowned atheist. He doesn't, however, he's not the normal atheist. He doesn't hate Christians and Christianity like atheists do and try to destroy Christianity, because atheism is its own religion. They are their own God. But Penn recognizes our Judeo-Christian foundations and has no problem with it. But he just insists, well, you don't steal my stuff, I can't steal your stuff. I can't murder you, you can't murder me, as just being a good person in society. Well, like it or not, he's still really getting that moral authority from God, whether he wants to admit it or not. Otherwise, how did you come to that? But let's give him grace. Again, but I pray for his soul, because I'm worried about his soul. But I idolize Penn. Well, idolize is the wrong word on a Christian show. But, yeah, I admire him for at least having a realistic worldly stance. He refuses to acknowledge God, but he acknowledges moral authority.
So let me give you. I was on Facebook a few years ago when they weren't censoring me. Now nobody ever sees my post. So I think before I post and 300 people would see my post. Now I post and maybe 5 people see my post. So I just stopped doing it. But back in the day when people were seeing my posts, I think their algorithm hadn't been perfected yet. A guy comes on and he says, "I don't need your stupid Bible to tell me that I should not kill or rape. I know that." And I said, yeah, you might not need my quote unquote stupid Bible to know you don't need to rape or kill, because you can't have a society that allows you to rape or kill. But you do need my quote unquote stupid Bible to say that slavery is wrong, to say that gladiatorial combat is wrong, to say that child abuse is wrong, to say that kidnapping brides is wrong, to say that killing twins for superstitiously is wrong, to say that throwing a widow on her husband's funeral pyre is wrong, to say that treating prisoners unfairly is wrong, in fact, to say that treating animals badly is wrong. And he goes, why? I know all that. I said, no. The only reason you know that is because a Christian got that from the Bible and got involved in politics and changed the law. That's the only reason why you know it's wrong, because no atheist ever said that, no Hindu ever said that, no Buddhist ever said that, no Muslim ever said that, until the Christian passed the law or said this was the right thing to do. So you need my Bible for that. Don't think that you don't. What you're doing is you're borrowing moral capital from us. You've taken God's moral capital and adopted it as yours, because if you had been born in a culture that thought slavery was okay, you would never have stopped to think slavery was bad. It was because a man named William Wilberforce and a pastor named John Newton and a man named Thomas Clarkson said, we have got to fight this. Because you see, before in the history of the world, every single society, every single culture, except for the Jews, except for the Israelis, I should say, thought that slavery was okay as long as they were not the slaves. The Bible really says it was wrong, because the Jews had that, the Israelis had that in the Torah, and you go, the Jews had slaves. No, they did not. They had indentured workers. Now you can go look that up, and I have a whole sermon on that one. But that would take slavery around in the Bible.
That would be a whole other episode. And indeed, I agree, and why the GOP, the Republican, it's in the name, was founded based on our founders Judeo-Christian ethos and slavery as wrong, founded as the Abolitionist Party to end slavery. It all comes full circle. Well, my friend, I like to keep episodes to around 30 minutes. We're there now. We'll go longer, but I do want to... Go ahead.
I have a new book out.
Oh, good.
It's called How to Stop Racism in America, a real solution for African American plight.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Podcast fans, get more about your favorite podcasts via deepcast.fm, transcripts, and all kinds of extra available information on your favorite podcast, including ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, is listed at deepcast.fm, as well as, are you a podcaster? Well, you can claim your free listing and more via Deepcast Pro. Check out tinyurl.com/DeepcastPro for podcasters for your free listing, and that's the number 4 in there. tinyurl.com/DeepcastPro for podcasters, the number 4, Deepcast Pro, the number 4 podcasters via tinyurl.com extension. Take care, all. You gotta check them out. Get more out of your podcast, whether you're the podcaster or the podcastee. Yeah, I think I just invented that word. I will have that in the show notes also. And although I got to tell you, I got to go on my rant. Unfortunately, and Kevin covered this in the discussion with him, racism, I hate the word. We've come to accept to use it, but we are one human race. We are subcultures and subclasses, not separate races.
I have a whole chapter on that. And it says there is no race. There are no races. In fact, saying that there are races is racist.
Yeah.
If that word means anything, it's kind of ironic because the word racist doesn't mean anything. What you really mean is you're ethnocentric or you're discriminating based on something else. So racism really has no word. But since we're using that word, I have to use it.
Right. That's like a bunch of other words too that we like. Democracy, when we are not a mobocracy, we are a constitutionally limited republic.
But don't get that wrong though. The left wants a democracy.
Yes, no question. They want mobocracy on their way to full fascism.
Yeah.
But
by the way, and I should throw this out there: there never in the history of mankind has there ever been a real fascist. Most fascists, almost every real fascist, has been a socialist.
Yeah. Well, Hitler himself.
There's no fascists who are not socialists that we know of. Like, for instance, Hitler, National Socialist Party. Right. Mussolini, the socialism. Saddam Hussein, Baath Party socialist. Idi Amin, if you remember him, he was a socialist.
Franco fascism in Spain. Yeah.
You're right. You can go all the way down to. You can go all the way down to Caesar. Caesar was a socialist too, even though it was a Republic of Rome, but he was a socialist. Why? Because you can't get absolute power without promising the masses something. You can't get the masses to come to your aid and put you in power unless you promise them free stuff. In Caesar's case, bread and circuses.
Yeah,
right?
two things. Oh, bread. I've got several episodes on bread and circus. Yeah. 2 things. Hitler, you said it, Nazi, Socialist, Deutschland Arbeiter Party. It was actually in the name twice. Arbeiter Party, Workers' Party, Socialists. Yep. It's in the name twice. They became later known as fascists. They were Goebbels coined the term Nazi
Yep.
Soci, which we then shortened to Nazis, but it's
Yep.
in the name. And I got into a lot of trouble. I've got a piece on thelibertybeacon.com about Whoopi Goldberg being right on something when she said Hitler and the Jew situation was not about race. And she was right, because we are all one race. It
Yep.
was
That's true.
religious bigotry,
It was,
classism, and culturalism. But of course, he killed a lot more than just Jewish people.
No, he killed. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and the reality is that whenever you abdicate objective moral laws, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. And so that's what Hitler was doing. They were coming up with their own laws. They thought that the state decides what was law. And I asked the question this way. I said, look, if there is no objective morality, why was Hitler wrong? If there is an objective morality, why do you get to decide what it is and not Hitler?
It's just a matter of opinion then.
The right answer is none of us get to decide it. You have to have an objective moral authority.
Yeah, well, you stated that succinctly and perfectly there. I'm glad we went down that road. Dinesh D'Souza, in a couple of his films, did really well on discussing the whole Margaret Sanger is where the Nazis got the eugenics from.
Yeah.
The Wilson Democrat administration is where Goebbels and Spears got the censorship issue from, and tell a lie over and over. Eventually someone will believe it. But Dinesh, in his movies like Death of a Nation, the Nazis even thought that U.S. Democrats went too far with you're black if you have one drop. They didn't even go that far in their destruction and murder and determination of what Jew or not went to the camps. Yeah. At any rate, like with any of my guests, we could talk for 5 hours and nobody would watch it. So with that, let's wrap it up with how you met Kevin and your involvement in the creation of Every Black Life Matters as an extension of All Lives Matter.
So basically, my wife was looking on Facebook one day, and we noticed some of our Christian friends, this is back in 2020, was out protesting with BLM. And these friends they were so scared, they wouldn't even let their kids play with our kids without a mask on. And this is during COVID, right? Our kids didn't wear masks. We didn't do anything. And they wouldn't even get close to our kids. It wouldn't even touch the same soccer ball. And we were kicking it. But and yet they were out there protesting with BLM. She said, and they're Christians. And so she turns to me, she says, they don't realize that BLM is a Marxist demonic organization.
Exactly.
And so she turned to me and she said, there needs to be an alternative, a Christian alternative to BLM, because the only reason they're out there is they don't want people to think they're racist. Right?
Bingo.
And they want to make a fact that they're against racism. So it's an honorable thought.
It is virtue signaling.
It's virtue signaling. But we're all against racism. I mean, how many people are not against racism except for the few KKK members?
Yeah, there's some. And that brings up the whole Charlottesville lie, because we're recording on September 11th. My friends. Right. All right. And the debate was last night. And of course, that Charlottesville lie keeps coming up over and over. Trump said at the Department of Transportation press conference, you can find the video for yourself. Brandon Strzok, a gay white man who was a Democrat, looked at that and said, they've lied to me. What else have they lied to? And is now a conservative Republican member of the gay club, the log cabin Republicans, because they don't represent you. They don't. They just lie. And this is all virtue signaling. I forgot where I was originally going to go with all this.
The whole thing about, so BLM. Right. So she turned to me, she said, you should talk to Kevin McGarry, because he was a good friend of ours, and ask him to talk, because Kevin was president of the Frederick Douglass Foundation at the time, and ask him to have the Frederick Douglass Foundation start an arm that will help people express their desire that they're not racist. And I said, great idea. So I called Kevin up and I say, hey, you guys should do this. At least get a website up or something and help people out so they have an alternative. That's not Marxist and demonic. And he said, oh, great idea. So he goes back and talks to the Frederick Douglass Foundation. And they say, Kevin, this is a great idea. And they knew me. Dean Nelson was the president at the time. Wonderful man of God. He's now with the Lord. But he says, well, you know what, Kevin, we're so busy right now. It's in the middle of the election season. We're really working hard. I think you and Neil should do it. So Kevin calls me up and he says, hey, Dean says that you and I need to do it. And I said, yeah, but I don't know if you've looked, Kevin, but I ain't black, in the famous words of
Joe Biden. Yeah.
He hadn't said that yet. But
you like Elon are actually African American, but you're not black.
So Kevin then said, well, no, wait a minute. In this video call right now, you're the only African American here. I'm like, what? You were actually born in Africa. I've only visited Africa. You lived in Africa.
Like Elon Musk and Charlize Theron, who is whiter than your whitest sheet of paper.
Right. So that was the running joke. He says, not only are you African American, all your kids are African American too, because if you have even a drop of African American blood, you're African American. So that was the running joke. But so we started looking at, so what? Two things we had to do. One, what are we going to call it? And we knew we wanted a name similar to BLM. Because otherwise people don't even pay attention, right? Because they had a bunch of other really good organizations, but nobody ever associated it with the BLM. So we said, okay, we've got to have Black Lives or something in there. So we looked at all Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. And the website, the URL that was available was Every Black Life Matters. So we got that one. We decided on that name. And because the other one was Black Lives Matter too, but all Black Lives Matter, right, is the... So we ended up with that. But then we said, okay, what are our principles? And I said, well, let's open up BLM's website. And at that time, they still had all these principles. And we looked at their website and we said, well, hey, you know what? Every one of the things that they're complaining that they are standing for is exactly why there is Black plight, why the Black people are suffering. No fatherhood. They're against fatherhood. They're against marriage. They're pro-gay, pro-homosexual, all that stuff. Everything that breaks down the family unit, and they're against school choice, and they're against all these things, and they're pro-abortion. I said we should just take our stances should be the diametric opposite of theirs, and we'd be good.
Take their site, a picture, and put a red pen through every line, right?
That's pretty much what we did. And then we realized that there was a lot of wisdom in the opposite of what they were doing. In other words, we realized that BLM stances were so specifically designed to destroy the Black family that our stances, by comparison, were actually the wisest stances we could have taken. So in other words, it is of my opinion that their stances were demonically derived by. They got there demonically, because it is the worst thing you could do. So if you take the opposite of any demonic stance, you end up with probably the most wise stance to do.
Yeah.
That's what we ended up with our stance.
I'm going to get myself in trouble here. I know it. When this episode airs, watch the social media platforms will go crazy, but they are the useful idiots. They are the porch Negroes. They are the useful idiots. Hey, we'll be part of the white plantation as long as we get to do good from it and help you oppress the others. Yep. As Candace Owens says, it's just a new plantation. It's an economic plantation. Democrats have not changed at all from the KKK days.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin actually has a book coming out saying, House Negro, Field Negro, which one are you?
Thank you, Kevin. I won't be the only one that gets the heat then. But no, he's saying I summed up what he's saying in his book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that is, and a lot of people don't know that, right? So
Right. Yeah, but again, people don't know any of our history, let alone the world history, which is why I talk the Bradford Communist Mayflower Compact that failed long before Marx came along on our own continent. Two things, though, I remember I was going to say about Trump said 3 times in that DOT presser, I am not talking about the KKK, the white supremacists, or the neo-Nazis. He said that over and over. That's why Brandon Strzok, it looks like Straka, it's pronounced Strzok, gay white Democrat, became a conservative Republican because he kept buying CNN and the MSNBC's lies about what he said out of context. And the other thing is, I'm glad you mentioned Frederick Douglass, because the left loves to quote early Frederick Douglass about being, we're all slaves, later learned, educated himself on the Constitution and why the 3/5 clause was really there, and denounced that writing of his and became a Republican.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I talk about the 3/5 clause in my book, in this book, and I explain what it was all about.
For the transcript and those on audio, he's holding up the "How to Stop Racism in America" book again.
So, and you can find that on Amazon too. So, but the thing there was that it was designed specifically to prevent the slave states from taking over. And then the other thing, but I also talk about why the South.
Right, it was about apportionment of representatives. Yeah. Giving the left, giving the Democrats, giving the slaveholders less representation.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, I mean, basically the South wanted to count every slave, even though the slaves couldn't vote. And that way they would get more representation in Congress. And and so the compromise there was, no, we don't, but then the South said, well, if you don't do that, we're not going to join the Union. Now, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, yeah, that would have been a problem because, only 3 states were non-slave states, right? So we would have had a colony of 3 states. We would have had a rebellion of 3 states. So they did have to have the South for it. So I think the greater purpose was served by actually forming the Union. And then, even though those 3 states were then able to influence everybody else and create.
But again, no one knows our damn history. They don't learn that. Then Frederick Douglass didn't know it till he educated himself, became aware, and became a Republican because of it. At any rate, I have a
quick quote about history. I said, people who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. But then I said, there's a caveat. People who know their history and think they're smarter are doomed to make bigger mistakes.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I always say history may not repeat, but it rhymes a lot. That's not original. I don't remember who I got that from, but I like that a lot. I wish I could credit who came up with that, because that's perfect. I don't like to, I don't steal people's stuff. If I borrow it, I give them credit, but I don't know who to accredit in that case. But here's your homework, your assignment, audience. You have 5 books from me to buy, several books from Neil Mammen to buy, and also several books from Kevin McGarry to buy. Read them, be well educated, much more informed, and then educate your dumb neighbors.
Amen.
Thank you, Neil Mammen, for coming on. You have a website. Obviously, we got to do that. Where do people reach out to you?
So everyblm.com, everyblm.com is probably the best one. The other one is JesusIsInvolvedInPolitics.com.
Yeah, I knew that. That's where I first reached out to you years ago. I want to write that down right now. I'm making a note.com so don't forget to put that in the show notes. That'll be in the show notes, people. All right. Thank you again, my friend. I would love to talk to you for 5, 8, 48 hours. But thank you for the time you've given us. Have a good one. Take care. God bless.
God bless.
Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help to grow the show.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.